You know, this should be an enjoyable occasion, a new improved version of a manufacturer's most iconic product. Regrettably, this is not the case. It's left soon-to-be owners in a state of unnerving anticipation, and those merely spectating are just waiting to see how badly it fails. This really shouldn't be this way at all. Throughout this period following the version 3 release, we have been holding it under the most intense scrutiny, and a lot of us were severely let down by GHK's appalling disregard to quality control. Therefore, sadly, this launch hasn't been met with excitable enthusiasm. On the contrary, instead it's been a bloodthirsty witch hunt to determine whether we're getting sodomized by a brand that doesn't care about making a good product.
Holy shit! I got to go now!
Throughout the creation of my initial impressions footage and subsequent days following my unboxing, I noticed a few things on my particular sample that are unfortunately consistent with experiences many other owners have been subjected to. It is consistently bad. How you doing, everyone? Bada Bing here, thank you for joining me today. To my regular viewers, it's great to see you. How's it going? I'll see you in the comments section. If you see me on your recommended page on YouTube and have not yet hit the red button, why not join me? Coffee and gun porn. What's not to like? I made a Facebook post that teased the immediate nightmare of the latest version, and it took off quite well, and even shared a few times. This post was loud enough to be heard by GHK themselves, with GHK coming back to us with an apology and a commitment to reinforcing quality control and management. They are claiming that they found only a minority of cases with a slight deviation on the buttstock. To be honest with you, the amount of images I've seen of naked AK rear ends on the HRC Discord, I'd say it was the majority of cases that displayed these flaws. If anyone has bought one of their following recent batches of the version 3 AK, let me know what it's like. Either DM me on Facebook or on Instagram, with some photos too, as I'd like to see the commitment to their pledge going forward. The story begins in the run-up to Christmas, and I would have liked to have played it out happily as a normal unboxing first impressions video, unravelling the excitement like a child on Christmas Day. But it's hard to ignore all the individual flaws that make up an overall platform that's masquerading as a premium GBBR. It plays out like normal, ripping open the box to see what lies beneath, revealing a seemingly okay-looking replica. Upon removing it from the box and peeling away the bubbles to see the AKM for the first time, and glancing over the receiver, to find its finish is similar to my V2 with the bluing. However, those steel parts all differ on the finishing. The top cover in particular doesn't match the main receiver. What catches the eye within those first moments happens to be the receiver top cover, which hides most of the serial number. Our very first indication that this just might turn into the nightmare before Christmas. Pressing on to speak of its build quality, and the new steel barrel adds a lot more heft to the platform as a whole. The construction is rigid, no wobbling for almost the entire platform. Although, the immediate updated dual-pin gas block has some slop to it, along with a wobbly gas tube. The pins on the gas block have already started to work their way out, and look, one of them is missing. As I mentioned earlier, this release has been held under the highest level of scrutiny, a defense mechanism based from years of disappointing feedback across the airsoft community, and shining a light on what I have on this individual unit. Number 1, the canted front iron sight. We've got to get behind the rifle to see this perspective, and if you just focus in on the rear sight assembly and then look beyond that to the front sight post, you will see it's canted a few degrees to the right. Number 2, the wobbly gas block. Once again, I'll mention the gas block here too. Those pins that secure it hold a light grip, and that recoil of this beast has shaken one of them into oblivion. Number 3. The rear sight block. As we move downwards, there's yet more incredibly bad news. The groove in which the rear iron sight sits down within is far too wide, hence the rear sight has some side-to-side movement. FYI, my old 2013 version 2 sight block hugs the sides of the rear sight perfectly, so it cannot deviate. It's time to remove the top cover, and it is extremely difficult to get it off unless you have a mallet handy. Of course, over a few weeks it has loosened up, so you can get by without using tools, but you've got to work for it. And with that out of the way, and the working parts stripped out, let's look at the state of the receiver, because it's bending all over the place here. Using a straight edge on either side of the receiver, there is bulging, and you can really see the varying thickness as we go along. Number 5. Riveting. You can see daylight under the rear trunnion rivet. At the very least, they are holding steady and not freely spinning around like someone's example that I've seen. Number 6. The stock trunnion and the stock. The rear stock trunnion is twisted or slightly canted, and it looks like they've compensated by cutting the wood stock to counteract this error. It hasn't worked. Number 7. Loose magazine. The updated version 3 magazine, while aesthetically hitting the mark with its authentic spot welds on the side, it's generally got a loose connection within the mag well. Sure, it's easier to insert than the V2s, but this is bound to create a tiny amount of gas leakage, and can contribute to further issues down the road. Number 8. The cleaning rod. It is insignificant, but the hole drilled out of the foregrip for the cleaning rod isn't straight, and it makes it extremely difficult to take out. These are the things which are obvious manufacturing flaws with this AKM. These are the most common with, I'd say, the majority of version 3 owners. I think I've only seen 2 reports of version 3 AKs that are straight and seemingly without issues. Anything beyond this point I may have either missed completely or are simply quirks of the GHK system. Besides its inherent flaws or peculiarities, this demented system, as a shooter, what's it like? Well, honestly, it feels like a lot like my version 2, which makes complete sense as it's using the similar operating system. The action itself is gritty. As is the way with GHK, their metals are often rough and take time to wear in. The felt recoil experience is visceral. Although with that heavy response, it does exhaust the gas system much quicker, so she does batter your shoulder in rather well for a toy. But having said that, the excitement is short-lived, as you feel its enthusiasm wane fairly soon into the magazine, especially if you happen to be firing at a higher rate, and even more so if it's cold. I demonstrate that rate of exhaustion here, as the bolt covers less ground as it goes along. I activated the dry fire mode and fire at a constant rate. It's in no way a practical demonstration, mind you, and constantly firing like this isn't fair to it, but take this example as you will. Once I hit 25 shots, it loses that composure as it burns through the gas supply, and here it becomes sluggish. By the time it gets to 40, it's essentially reverted back to a version 2 GHK, because that's the limit of its travel. As it enters the 80s and then the 90-shot barrier, the carrier isn't moving back far enough at all, and chirps out the remaining gas supply until it is dead. This exhaustion washes over the AK quickly. That increased bolt travel earns itself a slower rate of fire, although you can choose those variable travel insets to best suit your requirements. Under the weight of that heavy steel bolt and stiff spring, the increased length of travel blows away the previous gen. It feels so much more realistic. It is a vibe that is enhanced by the raw sound of the bolt dragging over the hammer. It wins points for its ASMR abilities here. I did a quick test for gas mileage, and after 5 seconds of propane, the AKM gets off 58 successful shots. Successful as in the bolt travels back far enough to strip the next round out of the BB feed lips. All the following shots up to 80 were only moving the bolt a centimetre or two and no longer capable of feeding rounds. With 10 seconds of propane, it fired 89 BBs, and it made it to 120 with the short stroke spluttering. And finally, with 15 seconds of propane charged, it fired 102 BBs and overall 160 shots. I ran some 3.2s through the chrono, and it had a high of 336 FPS, and the lowest was at 300. With the exception of 2 sharp falls in FPS, the rate of descent was fairly consistent. I saw this kind of behaviour too on the Explosive Enterprises AKM review. Fully auto mag dumping. Kind of shakes up your whole sight picture there. The gas capacity on the warm magazine on a cool day was able to mag dump on fully automatic, but you can see it struggle quickly into it. The lightweight bolt carrier of the version 2 is immensely comfortable on automatic, and you could confidently leave your selector right where it is, slap bang in the middle for a day's skirmishing, because that's where it was happiest. The version 3 is not comfortable doing that at all. On a cold magazine, the steel bolt is too detrimental to efficiency. Of course, it doesn't really help matters when the magazine connection is as flimsy as my excuse as to why I haven't completed my e-learning at work yet. Well, it's empty. Right then, fully automatic mag dump on a relatively cool mag. That's 11 degrees Celsius, so it's not warm and it's not totally cold, but we're going to see how the AK performs in this particular temperature. So yeah, none of this bursting nonsense. Let's just go full on fully automatic and see if it can, well, see how it does really. So 11 degrees Celsius, and yeah, I cleared the magazine and there was quite a lot of exhaustion going on there, so yeah. And here's my Magpul AK Mo PMag, which I modified for the GHK internals, the internal gas tank. I did this about a year before they released their official AKG mag. Never mind, let's see if it runs. Fully automatic mag dump. We got 15 degrees Celsius. So that's mildly going over its shooting abilities, apart from accuracy, range, and also cold weather testing. Now, allow me to talk about some positives for a moment, because surprisingly, GHK did some nice things to tart up their AKM, and most of which were not part of the official version 3 release data. Beginning with the indentation on the front of the magwell. This is a fairly small characteristic that replicates the real feature. It's present on the Tokyo Marui AK, and the version 2 GHK it was absent, but it's a nice feature. Another small feature, which makes this rifle even more authentic, is the positioning of the selector markings and the lever's position. The version 2 had the automatic mode set right in the middle of the receiver, whereas the real one was stationed further down. The version 3 have moved it to the correct location, just beside the lower half of the third pin. Next, GHK have further corrected the trigger guard. The previous rifle had it sloped downwards. Here, they squared it off, and it looks all the better for it. I detested it so much that I fixed it on my version 2 as well. As the recoil is strong with this one, those screws holding the trigger guard together began creeping out, so you would do well to add some thread locker to it. Sadly, they are still using that ugly long trigger. If I were to keep this rifle, the trigger will have to be replaced with a more authentic option, either the Hephaestus or W&S, like on my version 2. Don't get me wrong, these improvements still do not absolve GHK for their crimes. It's just nice to see they took care of a few things. The new barrel interface updates are crucially required from the last model. The new barrel assembly promotes, or it should promote, a reliable straight alignment of the barrel set. Thankfully, they've made amends by using a gas blowback spec barrel set, allowing you to use your preferred gas blowback rubbers and barrels, but the chamber is still plastic. The hop-up wheel, while being smoother to use and far easier to tell which way you need to adjust, it just spins around with no bearing on how far into the calibration you've gone. And it doesn't stop at its maximum setting, it just goes around and around and around. Those central alignment updates for the bolt carrier assembly are much needed. Now that the nozzle is effectively designed to ride within those receiver guide rails as well as the bolt carrier, the reliability of the feeding mechanism is reassuringly centralized, right up until one of those or both of those nozzle guides breaks off. I really admire that idea though, that keeps the nozzle alignment in check. It's the same kind of barbaric engineering that I would have done because I don't know how to make an airsoft gun either.
I only ride them, I don't know what makes them work.
It's a damn shame they did not include a nozzle return spring, so we just have to deal with it. When you are removing the carrier, the nozzle hangs out like a German shepherd's tongue, and you have to try and stuff it all back in order to remove the carrier. It's such a pain. Forgetting about those manufacturing horrors I mentioned earlier, and to sum up my initial thoughts, it's quite a ruggedly handsome piece, and I like those generational upgrades with the redesigned barrel set. It is the fundamental addition that hopefully remains a reliable solution. The corrected length of the receiver and real spec dust cover makes an increasingly worthy replica for my collection. For that reason alone, it makes it shine even brighter than my version 2 because I know it's a touch more accurate. The longer travel bolt carrier certainly raises the pulse more than the old one. It's that real gun vibe you will love. Or I should say, it's a slightly elevated real gun vibe, as it's not full travel. Its ability as an airsoft gun has fallen short for me, and that's all because of that exhaustion I mentioned earlier. I'm so used to the version 2, it being just excited to be fired, and 1 to 40 being a thrill ride, and you could tell it was enjoying it a lot more than you were. At its bare minimum, this works. In my opinion, what I want from a gas blowback is a level of confidence that it can run the entire load of BBs with a high degree of ease. The version 3, in this regard, is both underwhelming and embarrassing. Having a GBBR that runs out of breath, plus, with its QC flaws in their abundance, it's a GBBR that I regret buying. Should have spent the money on something useful. I paid over £600 for this rifle, and if I were them and I saw what I let off the shop floor, I would not be able to leave the house. The shame. So, GHK did not do a good job on most of the version 3s they sold, and right now they are sheepishly running damage control, and I wish them all the best. They cannot leave it in this unfit state where it chugs and splutters, even in favourable conditions. they prioritised certain aspects before performance. Their version 2 AKM and M4s, for all their quirky features, they run so wonderfully well, with the final bolt cycle being delightfully crisp. After this nightmarish batch, it's going to be really difficult for them to get some of those customers back, and they might not return, and you only have yourselves to blame, GHK. Thanks for watching my initial impressions video. I'll be comparing this AKM to the Tokyo Marui AKM at some point in the future, although there's not really much point for that, is there? If you'd like to support my channel, the old ways are the best. Like, share, and subscribe. For news, reviews, and just about anything else, stay notified for when new videos go live. For regular updates, you can join me over on Facebook, as I often upload news there first. After all, it's quicker to post there than it is to make a video, so check me out on there and also on Instagram. Take care, my friends.